The camera timer blinked red. My cheek was still stinging, sharp and hot, right where Serena's ring had raked the skin. "Cheeks," Dad chirped, sounding just like an announcer. His smile was as bright as the tree lights. I smiled too. I smiled because just 5 minutes earlier, I found the one document that could end their whole performance forever. My name is Nora Ellison. I am 32 years old, and for the first time in 3 years, I was walking willingly back into the performance. The drive to Pine Bridge had been silent, just the crunch of fresh snow under my tires. The Vermont air outside was clean and sharp, cold enough to feel real. Then, I stepped through the oversized oak door of my father's house, and the reality stopped. The air inside was thick, pressurized with artificial heat and the cloying scent of simmering cider and hot plastic. It had been 3 years since I cut contact. 3 years of building a life in Harbor City. A small apartment that smelled like salt air and old wood. A life that was mine. Coming back here was like willingly submerging myself in brackish water. I was here for Christmas. I stepped onto the polished marble of the foyer, my boots leaving wet prints that I knew would bother Serena. The house was loud, not with laughter, but with a brittle, performative energy. I saw it immediately. The living room was not a living room. It was a production studio. My father, Grant, and my stepmother, Serena, had gutted it of any comfort and replaced it with a stage. 2 massive softbox lights stood in the corners like skeletal soldiers, their white glare killing the warmth of the fireplace. Thick, silver tinsel was draped over every conceivable surface, not hung, but stapled into place. A massive, perfectly conical fir tree stood by the window, suffocated in coordinated gold and white ornaments. And then there were the uniforms. Serena, a former image consultant for a fashion brand that had spectacularly imploded, believed in branding. This year's brand was a thick, hideously bright Kelly green wool. A catering assistant, Serena never did her own heavy lifting, drifted towards me, her own face tight with a professional smile, and handed me my assigned sweater. It was heavy, and the moment I pulled it over my head, the wool began to prickle at my neck and wrists. Grant's voice boomed before I saw him. "Nora, you made it!" He emerged from the crowd of distant cousins, his own green sweater stretched tight over a stomach that had grown in my absence. He smelled faintly of expensive scotch, his afternoon calibration. He gave me a brief, papery hug, his eyes already flicking past me, looking for Serena. Serena found me before I could even set my bag down. She did not walk. She glided, a shark in cashmere trousers. "Darling," she said, her voice a low purr that always set my teeth on edge. She did not hug me. She grabbed my elbow, her fingers digging in, steering me toward the grand staircase where the rest of the immediate family was being assembled for the official portrait. "We have to get the shot before the light changes," she murmured, as if the sun mattered when the room was already flooded with artificial daylight. She pushed me into position, right next to the heavy newel post. The rest of the family shuffled into place. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all smiling, all green. Serena leaned in close, her perfume, a heavy floral that always smelled like a funeral, washing over me. She was adjusting my hair, her fingers cold against my skin. She pressed my face hard against the cold, lacquered wood of the post, her body blocking the view from my father, who was fiddling with the camera tripod. "We simply cannot have you spoiling the photo, are you?" she whispered, the words so sweet they were acidic. Her other hand, the left one, came up to my cheek. I saw the flash of her 3-carat diamond, the one that represented the sale of my grandmother's beach house. She did not slap me. She dragged the stone and its setting down my skin. From cheekbone to jaw, it was fast, precise, and agonizing. A hot, sharp line of pain erupted. I did not make a sound. I did not flinch. I just stared at the wood grain an inch from my eye, the scent of lemon polish and her perfume filling my nose. "Cheeks!" My father's voice, loud and bright from across the room, a technical command. He had not seen, or he had, and this was his way of moving on. We need those white teeth smiles. People, for the card. I tasted copper. I swallowed the pain, pushing it down into the cold knot of resolve that had been sitting in my stomach since I left Harbor City. I turned from the post, forcing Serena's hand away with a polite, stiff movement. I adjusted the itchy wool collar, pulling it up, knowing it would not hide the mark. My eyes scanned the group, and I saw her. Lyra, my half-sister, 17 years old and drowning. She stood on the edge of the group, her green sweater swallowing her. She was not looking at anyone, just staring at her own feet, her hands twisting the hem of the sweater. She was trembling, not a shiver from cold. The room was a furnace, but a deep, vibrating fear. Her terror was the mirror of the stinging on my face. She was trapped here, and her fear was the final confirmation. I had done the right thing by coming back. I had worn my puffer jacket inside, refusing to let them take it at the door. My right hand was deep in the pocket, my fingers wrapped around the small, hard object that was the entire reason for this visit, a slim black USB drive. It felt anonymous, cheap, and utterly powerful. I had palmed it that morning from a processing clerk at Riverglass Trust, Serena's flagship family fund. Riverglass, the entity she had created to manage my father's assets, the charity that swallowed donations and family properties alike. This little piece of plastic held the truth of it. The hidden ledgers, the transfers to shell companies, the real reason my grandmother's nursing home bills had suddenly, inexplicably been rejected by insurance. The drive was cold against my palm, an anchor of fact in this ocean of performance. The camera timer, perched on the tripod, began its insistent, blinking countdown. Red, red, red. "Nora, smile! Right now!" Serena hissed, her own face now a mask of festive joy for the camera. I smiled. I felt the skin pull tight over the fresh scratch. The timer chirped its final warning. The flash exploded, a painful white burst that bleached the room for a second. The camera clicked, capturing the lie. The perfect shell snapped shut. We were frozen. The perfect, happy, green-clad family. Underneath the performance, the air was thick with the scent of dying pine needles, the artificial sweetness of cinnamon potpourri, and the sharp metallic tang of my own blood. As the family dissolved, laughing and reaching for the champagne flutes the caterers were passing, I stood still for a second. I let my smile drop. I counted in my head, a new checklist for a new game. 1. The data is secure. 2. Get Lyra somewhere safe. 3. Expose the trust. I was not here as a daughter. I was here as an auditor. My gaze drifted to the massive, carved fireplace mantel. It was Serena's shrine to herself. A decade of Christmases, framed in heavy, ornate silver. Every year, a new theme, a new set of matching outfits. And in every single photo, Serena was at the center. Her smile, wide and predatory, was the focal point. Grant, beside her, beamed with a vacant pride. In the older photos, I was on the edge, a stiff, awkward girl. In the newer ones, Lyra had taken my place, a beautiful doll with haunted eyes. The photos from the last 2 years, the ones taken during my absence, looked like magazine covers, perfect, glossy, and dead. Serena was already directing the staff, her voice sharp, pointing toward the dining room. She thought this was her production. She thought she was the director, the star, the one who controlled the narrative. She had built her entire world on controlling the lighting, ensuring only her most flattering angles were ever seen. I touched the USB drive in my pocket again. She had no idea. She was so busy managing the festive lights in the living room that she never saw the forensic spotlight I was about to power on. This time, I was not an actor in her play. I was the one controlling the lights. The scratch on my cheek was a grounding pain, a sharp anchor in the present. But my mind was already pulling back, cutting through the noise of the party, projecting the past 3 years onto the back of my eyelids. It wasn't a stream of memory. It was a series of sharp, painful snapshots, the trailer for the disaster that had led me to this room. Cut to 3 years ago, Ridgeview, Ohio. I'm packing a rental truck in the rain. My father is standing on the porch, holding a coffee mug Serena bought him, his face a mask of confused helplessness. I'm 29, and I finally accepted that I am no longer a daughter in this house. I am a function, an emotional janitor, expected to clean up the messes left by his new marriage, to nod and smile while my own life is treated as a minor, inconvenient subplot. I am leaving because my presence is only required as an audience member, and I refuse to watch the show anymore. Cut to Serena. 10 years ago. She enters our lives not as a person, but as a proposal. A former image consultant for a mid-level fashion brand that went bankrupt under a cloud of accusations. She meets my father at a time when he is grieving, and she doesn't offer comfort. She offers structure. She manages him. She manages the house. Her management is cold, efficient, and total. She rebrands our family home, curates our social circle, and optimizes my father's assets. Grant, weak and grateful, calls it a miracle. He calls her his savior. I call her a hostile takeover. Cut to my old life, my desk at Vireo Diagnostics. I'm a clinical engineer. My days are puzzles of data, machinery, and human biology. I am good at it. I find the signal in the noise. I calibrate the machines that keep people alive. I solve problems that have real, tangible, life-saving answers. I get a call. I've been promoted to senior lead on the new ventricular assist device project. A real achievement. I feel a bright, uncomplicated spike of joy. I drive home, wanting to share it. I walk in the door, and the house is silent, but lit like a television studio. Serena is in the dining room, a ring light glaring on her face, talking in a syrupy, affected voice to her laptop. And this antique finish glass icicle, she's saying, is all about heritage. She's hosting a live stream, selling off-brand Christmas decorations to a select community of her followers. My father is sitting off camera, monitoring the comments. "We've got a new donation, honey," he calls out. Serena beams, not at him, but at the camera. "Thank you, Ohio Patriot 78. Your generous gift to the Riverglass Trust is going to help so many." I stand in the doorway, my promotion forgotten. I'm watching her monetize our family name. Her community fundraiser feeding a bank account I've never heard of. My promotion is just noise. Her signal is the only one that matters. Cut to a few months later, I'm at Ellison Cottage, my grandmother's house, packing the last of her things. It's a small, beautiful place that smells like her. All wood smoke and lavender. On the desk, under a stack of bird-watching guides, I find a thick envelope from the bank. It's a second mortgage agreement. I see my father's looping, confident signature. I see Serena's, tight and angular, right beside it. They've borrowed against the only real piece of Ellison history we had left. The purpose of loan section is blank, but the routing numbers at the bottom are not. The funds were to be deposited directly into the Riverglass Trust. Cut to the phone call. I'm in my cubicle at Vireo. The nursing home is on the line. "Ms. Ellison, we have a problem with your grandmother's account." I'm confused. She has comprehensive insurance, the best my father could buy. "The policy was denied," the administrator says, her voice flat. "The claim was rejected due to a paperwork glitch. It seems the primary guarantor on her policy was transferred last month." Transferred? To who? "I'm sorry. I can't release that information, but as of today, the account is in arrears." A cold dread, colder than the Vermont snow outside, floods my body. I know, with sickening certainty, whose signature is on that transfer form. Cut to the funeral. It is a sunny, cold day. My grandmother is gone, and Serena has turned the memorial into a production. She hired a photographer. She is wearing a custom-made black veil that looks dramatic, but not too dramatic. She is directing the family members, moving them around the gravesite for a better composition. My father, his face puffy and red, just nods. letting her move him like a mannequin. I am standing at the back of the family line, next to a cousin I barely know, when I receive the funeral program, a glossy, folded card with a stylized photo of my grandmother on the front. I open it. In the list of surviving family, I find my name. Nora Ellis. Not Ellison. A simple typo. Serena says later. An erasure. A final, passive-aggressive signature on her work. Cut to my apartment in Harbor City, Maine. It is small, just 2 rooms, but the windows face the ocean, and the walls are mine. I've painted them a soft gray. I have a job at a new biomedical firm. I am alone. And for the first time in years, I can breathe. I am rebuilding my life. 1 paycheck, 1 piece of furniture at a time. I am no longer Nora Ellis. I am Nora Ellison, and I am far away from them. Cut to 2 years later, a Tuesday night in my apartment. My phone buzzes on the kitchen counter. It's a message from a number I don't recognize, on an encrypted app. The message is from Lyra. The text is frantic, full of misspellings. She won't let me go. She took my phone. This is my friend's. She says the lookbook is more important. She says the writing camp is a waste of talent. A picture follows. It's a schedule, handwritten on Serena's personalized stationery. Lyra. Photo shoot. Lookbook. Winter line. Scheduled for 8 p.m. to midnight. Every night for 2 weeks. The same weeks as the young writers' camp she'd won a scholarship for. Serena wasn't just controlling Lyra. She was monetizing her, just as she had the cottage, just as she had my grandmother's legacy. Cut to last Christmas. I'm checking my mail. A thick cream-colored envelope. It's their Christmas card. I open it. The photo is stunning, professional, glossy. The family is posed in a snowy field, all of them in matching plaid. It looks like a Ralph Lauren ad. Lyra is beautiful, but her eyes are empty. Serena is in the center, her hand on Grant's chest. I am not in the photo. My absence is not even a gap. They have simply closed ranks, tightened the shot. I flip the card over, Serena's elegant script, and beneath it, a stamped caption. Family is everything. The lie is so profound, so complete, it makes me nauseous. I pin the card to my refrigerator, a reminder, a target. Since that day, I watched. From a distance, I saw the Riverglass Trust grow. It announced a Lyra Ellison Scholarship Fund, though I could find no record of any student ever receiving it. It sponsored an avalanche relief initiative after a light snowfall in Vermont, siphoning cash donations from concerned locals. It was a phantom charity, a black hole for undocumented money, and Serena was its dark star. Cut to 2 weeks ago, the invitation for this Christmas arrives in my inbox. The tone is not warm, it is a summons. The rules are laid out like a legal document. 1. All guests will be provided with the festive green coordinated wool attire upon arrival. 2. No plus ones. We are focusing on core family this year. 3. To ensure we are all present and in the moment, all personal devices will be collected in the foyer before dinner. I read the email twice. This was not an invitation. This was a trap. My non-participation, my absence, had become a flaw in their perfect brand. I was the loose thread she could not control, so she was creating a cage, a performance space, where she could force my compliance. She expected me to arrive, to be cowed, to put on the green sweater, and to smile for the photo. I hit reply. Can't wait to see you all. It's been too long. She thought she was setting a stage. She had no idea I was planning to burn the theater down. The execution of the plan began a week ago. When Serena's email landed in my inbox, it was not an invitation. It was a production schedule. Subject: Christmas Eve itinerary. It was itemized by the half hour. 3:30 p.m. Arrival and refreshments. 4:15 p.m. Depart for St. Jude's service. 5:30 p.m. Return for official family portrait. 6 p.m. Kitchen service begins. It was television production, not a holiday. I stared at the rigid timeline, a blueprint of her control. This was the trap, and it was my way in. I replied with a single, cheerful sentence. Looking forward to it? Serena, can't wait to be home. My compliance was the first move. I did not drive straight to Pinebridge. I drove to the Snowcap Inn, a gray, anonymous motel 2 towns over, the kind of place with ice machines that groan and carpets that smell like industrial cleaner. I checked in under my own name. I needed a secure base, a sterile environment away from the performance. I laid my tools out on the stiff polyester comforter, a digital audio recorder, disguised as a high-end black metal pen, the one I would use to capture the audio, a blank USB drive, slim and black, which I taped inside my boot, and a single, folded piece of paper, a letter of authorization from Lark and Alder, the legal firm I'd retained, authorizing me to act as an agent in reviewing public-facing charitable documents. This morning, December 24th, at 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into the Pinebridge branch of North Bank Credit Union. The air smelled of stale coffee and forced holiday cheer. I approached a teller who looked exhausted. I was polite, calm, and professional. I explained I was an agent for a third-party auditor, Lark and Alder, reviewing local charitable organizations for end-of-year compliance. I requested the public disclosure statements for the Riverglass Trust. The clerk, a woman named Sharon according to her badge, frowned. The Riverglass Trust? That's a private family fund. Ma'am, we can't just give you that. I smiled, reaching into my bag. I understand the confusion, I said, keeping my voice level. However, because the trust solicits public donations and claims tax-exempt status as a community relief fund, it is subject to the Vermont Transparency Statute, Section 449.b. I slid the printed sheet across the counter. It was a copy of the admittedly obscure, but very real, statute. I had highlighted the relevant passage. I'm only required to see the minimum public access, I added, helping her. Just the incoming and outgoing wire summaries for the last 6 months, no personal account numbers. She read it. She read it again. Her face tightened. She hated this. She picked up the phone, spoke in hushed tones to a manager, and sighed. Wait here. 5 minutes later, she returned with a thin printout. She did not hand it to me. She placed it on the counter. You can review this. Here, you cannot take it. I nodded, understanding. I pulled out the black pen and a small notebook, as if to take notes. As I leaned over the document, I clicked the top of the pen. A tiny, nearly invisible blue light flashed once. I shielded the pages with my body, my eyes scanning the columns, and there it was. It was not a smoking gun. It was a map of the entire arson. Riverglass Trust, incoming, donations, wire transfers, a massive influx from the second mortgage on Ellison Cottage, outgoing, a repeating substantial payment, once a month, to a single entity, Silver Slate LLC. I saw the amounts, $30,000, $50,000, $180,000, transferred just last week. I turned the page, my hand shielding the pen. I was writing notes, my pen hovering over the paper, the lens in the clip capturing a high-resolution image of every transaction. Silver Slate LLC. I already knew what it was. I had spent $200 on a business filing search last week. A Delaware corporation, an empty shell, with a single managing partner listed, S. Ellison, Serena. Are you finished? The clerk asked, her voice sharp. Almost, I said. I clicked the pen off. I closed my notebook. Thank you. Sharon, you've been very helpful. I walked calmly out to my car in the slushy parking lot. I plugged the pen into a converter, transferred the image files to my laptop, and compressed them into a password-protected zip file. I emailed the file to a secure, anonymous email account I had created for this purpose. Then I wiped the laptop, wiped the pen, and shut it all down. The evidence was safe. The evidence was off-site. Phase 1 was complete. I drove the last 20 minutes to the house. I parked in the guest space in the heated 3-car garage, next to Serena's white Range Rover, The garage was, as always, immaculate. Except for one corner, a stack of shipping boxes. One was open. The label on the side read, Donor Gifts, Q4. I glanced inside. It was filled with cheap, knock-off designer handbags, the kind with plastic-wrapped handles and a chemical smell. Tucked inside the box was a spreadsheet. I saw a list of names, local vendors, contractors Serena had used for the house, and next to them, reward tier, platinum. She was not just taking their money for the fund, she was paying them with worthless, counterfeit garbage, likely claiming the full retail price as a charitable expense. I took a picture with my actual phone, the last picture I would take before the confiscation. I zipped my puffer jacket, the blank USB still taped to my ankle, the recorder pen in my inner pocket. I walked into the foyer. Serena was there, as predicted, a vision in winter white. "Nora, darling," she air-kissed the space near my cheek. Her eyes were cold, scanning me. "So glad you could make it." She held out a silver tray. "House rules. You remember? We're having a device-free Christmas Eve. To be truly present." One by one, the cousins and aunts dropped their phones onto the tray. Serena watched me. I smiled, pulled out my phone, and placed it on the tray. "Great idea. Serena, it's so important to connect." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. She then produced a sheet of small, numbered stickers. "To make sure we get the right ones back," she said, peeling off a sticker, number 8, and affixing it to the back of my phone. She was tagging us, processing us like inventory at the door of a game show. "There she is!" Grant appeared. His face flushed. He hugged me. A real hug this time, but limp. He smelled strongly of scotch, that familiar afternoon scent of avoidance. "Good to have you home, kiddo." He pulled back, his eyes catching Serena's over my shoulder. I saw his expression in that brief, unguarded moment. It was not love. It was not partnership. It was pleading. "Please, be nice. Please, let this be easy." He was terrified of her, and he was terrified for me. As Grant turned to get a drink, Lyra slipped past, heading toward the staircase. She did not make eye contact. I moved, cutting her off gently in the hallway, away from the main room. "Lyra." She jumped, then saw it was me. Her face was pale, her eyes huge and dark. "Hi, Nora. Are you okay?" She glanced back toward the living room, where Serena's laugh, high and brittle, cut through the noise. Lyra grabbed my arm, her fingers cold. "Nora, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't make trouble. Not tonight. She's already tense. She'll get explosive." Explosive. The word choice was telling. I just looked at her, at the tremor in her hand. "I'm not here to make trouble, Lyra," I said, my voice low. "I'm here to fix it." She did not understand. She just pulled away, shaking her head, and fled up the stairs. I turned back toward the living room, but took a detour. Passing the entrance to the kitchen, I saw the caterers, all in black, moving swiftly, and on the massive marble island, I saw Serena's command center, her laptop, her clipboard, and her budget notebook. It was open. I only needed a glance, a single line item, written in her sharp, precise handwriting. Flowers, centerpieces, $2,500, and next to it, in red ink, offset via Riverglass Fund. She was using the charity to pay for the party. The audacity of it, the sheer brazen fraud, was so perfect, so Serena, that I almost laughed. I stepped back, out of the hallway, just as Serena clapped her hands. "Everyone! Family photo! Now! Now! Now!" I was steered toward the staircase, toward the polished newel post. I felt the scratchy wool of the green sweater against my skin. I felt the cold, hard edge of the blank USB drive against my ankle. And from across the room, I saw the camera, mounted on its tripod, its self-timer blinking. Red, red, red. I clenched my fists, gripping the blank, empty drive in my mind. I was ready. The show was about to begin. The family was arranged, a pyramid of green wool. With Serena and Grant at the apex, I was positioned on the edge, just as I had been in every photo. But this time, I was next to Lyra. Serena clapped her hands, her face a mask of radiant joy. Almost perfect. Just one tiny adjustment. She glided toward me. The crowd of relatives parted for her. She was the director, after all, and we were her cast. "Nora, darling," she cooed, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear her affection. "You've got a little flyaway. Let me—" Her hand, smelling of expensive, almond-scented lotion, came up to my hair. Her fingers, cold and strong, threaded through, gripping a lock near my temple. Then, she leaned in, her body blocking me from the room, her face inches from mine. Her smile was gone. Her eyes were flat, reptilian. Her thumb pressed into my jaw, holding my head still, while the fingernails of her other hand, the one in my hair, deliberately raked down. Not just the nails, the edge of the diamond. It wasn't a gentle adjustment. It was a marking. I felt the skin break, a hot, sharp line of pain from my temple down to my cheekbone, the same cheek she had raked with her ring at the staircase. This was a re-emphasis, a signature. "Smile, Nora," she whispered, her breath a cloud of mint and something sour. "You are here to be part of this family. Do not make yourself different. Do not ruin this." The threat was clear. It was not a request. It was a command to fall in line, to bleed quietly, to perform. I did not flinch. I did not pull away. I held her gaze. I let her see that I felt it, and that it changed nothing. She pulled back, her face instantly reassembling into the mask of the loving stepmother. "There, perfect," she announced to the room. My cheek throbbed. A fresh, hot line of fire. I could feel the faint, metallic scent of blood mixing with the pine and cinnamon. "All right, everyone," Grant's voice boomed from behind the tripod. He was in his element, the jovial patriarch, oblivious to the violence that had just occurred 2 feet in front of him. "This is the one. Big smiles. Cheeks." Cheeks, the technical command, the order to manufacture joy. I looked at the camera, at the blinking red light. I felt the itchy wool on my skin, the sting on my face, the cold, hard drive against my ankle, and the pen recorder, heavy and dense, in my pocket. I turned my head just slightly, aiming the fresh scratch toward the lens. I smiled. It was the widest, brightest, most teeth-baring smile I could manage. It was a predator's smile. The camera clicked. The flash was blinding, a single, surgical burst of white light that erased the room, turning us all into a high-contrast negative. Then, darkness. The room swam back into focus. The click of the shutter echoed. A definitive, metallic snap. The moment was captured. The lie was preserved. The family exhaled, a collective sigh. People began to break formation, reaching for drinks, laughing. The performance was over. Or so they thought. In the small, sudden pocket of silence as the laughter died down, and the first notes of a carol began to play from a hidden speaker, I turned my head slightly towards Serena. She was already looking at me, her eyes sharp, assessing if her warning had landed. I kept my voice low, conversational, almost casual, just loud enough for her to hear. Riverglass transferred $180,000 to Silver Slate last week. I said it like I was commenting on the weather. I watched her face, for half a second. Her entire body went rigid. The festive mask did not slip. It froze. Her smile became a porcelain rictus. Her eyes widened, just fractionally. It was the only tell. A micro-expression of pure, undiluted panic. She had heard me. She understood. Then, she recovered. It was a masterpiece of social engineering. She threw her head back and let out a bright, tinkling laugh that cut through the entire room. All conversation stopped. Everyone turned to look at the gracious, joyful hostess. "Oh, Nora!" she boomed, patting me on the arm as if I were a child who had said something nonsensical. What language are you speaking, darling? You must be so tired from your drive. I do not understand a single word. The room laughed with her, a chorus of polite, confused chuckles. I was, once again, the strange, serious daughter, the one who didn't fit, the one who said incomprehensible things. I did not laugh. I did not react. I let her have her moment. I just watched. From the corner, I saw Lyra. She had not moved. She was standing by the fireplace, her back to the mantel, her knuckles white. She was watching Serena. Her face was pale, her expression not one of confusion, but of pure, abject terror. She was not waiting for a social cue. She was waiting for the tsunami. She knew the tone of voice, the look in Serena's eye. She was bracing for impact. I let the laughter die down. I turned away from Serena, breaking her hold, and took one step toward the fireplace. I reached out and gently, almost lovingly, touched the ornate silver frame of my grandmother's photograph, the last one taken of her. Before the paperwork glitches, I turned my body, not just to Serena, but to my father, who was now fussing with the tripod, avoiding my gaze. I made my voice clear, louder this time, but still calm. I was not hysterical. I was stating a fact. The Ellison cottage, I said, my fingers tracing the silver, was mortgaged a second time. The funds were transferred directly into your fund, Serena. The room went silent. This was not an abstract string of words. This was a name, a place, the cottage. The relatives knew that name. They had been there for summer barbecues. It was history. My father's head snapped up. His face, which had been jovial, was now a dark, mottled red. The scotch had turned. Nora, he Growled. His voice low and threatening. That is enough. Today is Christmas. I know what day it is. Dad, I said simply. That's why I'm here. Serena saw she was losing the room. The confusion had turned to a tense, uncomfortable silence. She immediately shifted from defense to offense, but disguised it as concern. She clapped her hands again, a sharp, percussive sound. "Oh, this is just terrible," she announced, her voice dripping with pity. "Our poor Nora is exhausted. She's clearly overwrought. All that work, all that travel. Someone, please, be a dear and get Nora a hot cocoa. She just needs to sit down." She was dismissing me, painting me as unstable, emotional, a problem to be managed with sugar and pity. She was reasserting her role as the caregiver, the hostess, the one in control. It almost worked. An aunt I barely knew started to move toward the kitchen, her face a mask of concern. But under the cover of this new wave of noise, as she directed the aunt toward the kitchen, Serena moved toward me. She grabbed my arm in the same painful grip as before, digging her fingers into my bicep, and spun me slightly away from the crowd. Her face was pure venom. "You will stop this," she hissed, her voice a saw blade. She was no longer performing. And then, with a speed that was stunning, her other hand moved. She reached into the pocket of her tailored cashmere trousers and pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope. It was not a Christmas card. It was a bank envelope. She shoved it, hard, into my hand, forcing my fingers to close around it. "Here," she whispered, her lips barely moving. "I was going to give this to you later. For your trouble. Consider it a fee for keeping your mouth shut. A bonus. The family needs peace. Nora, take the money, and let us have peace." A bribe. She had come prepared. She had anticipated my anger, my resentment, and she had put a price tag on it. She thought my silence, my complicity, was for sale. I looked down at the thick envelope. I could feel the stiff rectangles of bills inside. A keep quiet fee. I looked up at her. I did not open it. I did not even glance at the amount. I simply, deliberately, slid the unopened envelope into the deep pocket of my puffer jacket. I let it sit there, next to the recorder pen. "Thank you, Serena," I said, just as quietly. Her eyes narrowed. She had expected me to refuse, to throw it back at her, to make a scene. My acceptance, my calm, was not part of her plan. She did not know what to do next. I turned and walked away from her, leaving her standing in the middle of the room. I walked toward the kitchen, as if following her own suggestion to get a drink. The caterers were buzzing, pulling trays from the oven. The smell of hot metal and sugar filled the air. Serena's command center was still on the marble island. Her laptop, her clipboard, her open notebook full of fraud. I walked past it. I reached into my pocket, my hand closing around the pen recorder. As I reached for a glass of water, my other hand simply dropped the pen onto the counter, right next to her planner. I clicked the top as I set it down. The tiny blue light flashed once, unseen in the clutter and the chaos. It was on. It was recording. It was perfectly positioned to capture the audio from the entire open-plan living area. Ting. A loud, piercing oven timer went off. The gingerbread, Serena's voice, suddenly restored to full, festive cheer, sang out from the living room. They're ready! As if on cue, the entire party, the aunts, the cousins, my father, burst into spontaneous, relieved applause. The tension was broken by a bell. The show was back on. The crisis was averted. The unstable daughter had been handled. And now there were cookies. I stood in the kitchen doorway, a glass of water in my hand. I watched as Serena, beaming, accepted a silver tray of perfectly decorated gingerbread men from a caterer. She presented it to the room like a trophy. I leaned against the doorframe, letting the show wash over me. I took a sip of water. I stepped back, out of the spotlight. I yielded the stage to her. The gracious, triumphant hostess. Let her perform. I had my evidence. And now, I had a live recording. The party's noise was my cover. I left the kitchen, the pen recorder active and safe on the marble island, a silent witness in the heart of the chaos. Serena, energized by her small victory, was holding court, a champagne flute in one hand, gesturing with the other. She was the star, radiant and in control. Grant, his face flushed with scotch, was laughing too loudly, his arms slung over an uncle's shoulder. This was the performance. This was the cover I needed. I scanned the room for Lyra. She was gone. Not in the crowd, not in the hallway, not in the dining room. A sharp, cold prickle of alarm cut through my focus. I moved toward the front of the house, my footsteps silent on the thick rugs. Through the frosted glass panels of the side door, I saw a shape, a small, dark huddle against the railing of the side porch. I slipped the door open. The frigid Vermont air hit me like a slap, a clean, sharp shock after the thick, overheated air of the house. The sound of the party immediately muffled, replaced by the high, thin sound of wind whistling through the bare pine branches. Lyra was on the top step, her knees drawn to her chest, her arms wrapped around them. The Kelly green sweater was a dark blotch in the twilight. She was shaking violently. "Lyra?" She gasped, her head snapping up. "I'm fine," she said, her voice thin. "I just needed some air." "It's 25 degrees out here. Lyra, you're freezing." I stepped back inside for a split second, long enough to grab a thick, dry napkin from the bar and a hot, damp cloth from a caterer's abandoned tray. I went back out, wrapping the hot cloth in the napkin, and handed it to her. "Here, put this on your hands." She took it, her fingers clumsy and stiff with the cold. She unfolded the napkin and pressed the hot, steaming cloth between her palms with a grateful sigh. "Thanks." "Your hands are trembling," I said, not as a question. I sat on the step a few feet away, giving her space. "It's just the cold," she insisted, but I could see it was more than that. Her entire body was vibrating with a fear that was clearly chronic, a tremor that had become her baseline. We sat in silence for a moment. The only sounds were the distant, thumping bass of a Christmas song from inside and the sigh of the wind. "You shouldn't have said that to her," she finally whispered, her voice so low I had to lean in. "You don't know what she's like. When people leave, she's going to make it bad for everyone." "What you said in the hallway," I said, keeping my voice just as quiet. You said she gets explosive. Does she hurt you, Lyra? She shook her head, fast. No, no, not like that. She doesn't hit me. It's not like that. She paused, her gaze fixed on the dirty, snow-covered lawn. The truth, when it came, was quieter and more complicated. She takes things. She makes everything a transaction. She makes you pay. The lookbook, I said. The writing camp. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. How did you know about that? You messaged me, remember? Last year, from your friend's phone. I still have the texts. Oh, she said, the tension leaving her in a rush. I forgot. I really wanted to go to that camp. What is the Lyra Ellison Scholarship Fund? I asked, pivoting to the new information. She visibly winced, as if I'd touched the scratch on my face. It's me. I'm the fund. She took a shaky breath, the cold air misting in front of her. She got me that modeling contract, that online boutique. She said I was a natural. I was excited. At first, it was real money. What happened to the money? It went into a bank account she set up for me, and then one night, she came into my room. She had this stack of papers. She said it was an ambassador contract for the Riverglass Trust. My blood ran cold. An ambassador contract for a 17-year-old. She said it was for tax purposes, to protect my earnings, to manage my image as part of the family brand. Lyra's voice was hollow, a perfect, bitter recitation. It was all this legal language I didn't understand. She just smiled and told me to sign it. She said if I didn't, she'd tell the agency I was unreliable and they'd cancel me. She said I was being ungrateful. So you signed it? What choice did I have? She whispered. The next day, my bank account was empty, all of it, gone. When I asked, she said it was transferred to the fund for management. She showed me the contract I signed. 70%. She takes 70% of everything I make. Nora. She calls it my contribution to the family's legacy. She says it's for my own scholarship fund. She was laundering her own daughter's income. A brilliant, vicious, and utterly legal gray area move. She was exploiting Lyra's labor, siphoning the money tax-free into her charity, all under the guise of parental management. Lyra, I said, and my voice was hard, colder than the air. That is not just exploitation, it's theft, and I am not going to let her do it to you for one more second. She looked at me, her eyes finally focusing, seeing me. There was a desperate, flickering hope in them that she was almost too afraid to acknowledge. What are you doing? Nora, you have a plan. I knew it when you walked in. You're not just here. I have a plan, I confirmed. And I am almost there, but I'm missing the last piece. Her internal files, the ones on her laptop. Lyra went still. Her office? It's locked. She keeps it locked. Always. I know, but I'm betting you know how to get in. She looked down at the warm cloth in her hands, her knuckles white. She was weighing the options, the immediate, certain terror of Serena finding out, against the small, burning, abstract possibility of freedom. She will kill me, Nora, if she knows I helped you. She will never know you helped me, I promised, my voice absolute. This is between me and her. You are not involved. You are a kid who went to the basement to watch a movie with your cousins. You are not in the room. You are not a witness. You are safe. She looked at me for a long, long time. Then, with a quick, nervous glance back at the house, she reached deep into the pocket of her jeans, hidden under the bulk of the itchy green sweater. Her hand emerged, and in her palm was a tiny silver key, the kind you use for a diary or a jewelry box. It's for the top drawer of her desk, Lyra whispered, pressing the cold metal into my palm. She keeps the main office key, the big brass one, in there. She thinks I don't know. My fingers closed around the key. The laptop. It will be password protected. A small, bitter laugh escaped her, a sound with no humor in it. It's always the same. It's the date of her wedding to Dad. But she thinks she's clever. It's not the numbers. She looked me right in the eye. The password is 1224 Gala. December 24th, Christmas Eve, the day she saved my father, the day she branded our family. Of course. Nora, she said, her voice suddenly urgent, grabbing my arm. She's planning to announce the scholarship fund tonight, after dinner. That's why the perfect photo had to be done by 6:30. She's going to make me give a speech, to thank her. This was her endgame, to use Lyra as a prop, to publicly validate her own fraud. She won't, I said, my voice flat. She won't be making any announcements tonight. I stood up, pulling her gently to her feet. Now, go, downstairs, to the basement. I saw a bunch of the younger cousins heading down there with iPads. Go and watch a movie. Stay there. Do not come up, no matter what you hear. Do you understand? What are you going to do? I'm going to finish my audit, I said. I squeezed her shoulder. It's going to be okay. Lyra, go. She nodded, a small, jerky motion. She slipped back inside the side door, but instead of turning toward the living room, she veered left, straight for the basement stairs. I watched her disappear. One victim, secured. I stepped back inside, my heart a cold, steady drum. The party was louder now. Serena was in the center of the living room, a fresh glass of champagne in her hand, holding court. She was telling an animated story about a disastrous charity auction she saved in Aspen. The room was hanging on her every word. I saw my father by the fireplace, his face ruddy, laughing. He was handing out red envelopes to some of the relatives. A little something, I heard him say, his voice thick with scotch and false generosity. For your contribution. Serena's so grateful for your support of the fund. He wasn't just taking donations. He was handing out dividends, or payoffs, to the inner circle. The pen recorder, sitting innocently on the kitchen counter, was capturing all of it. The speeches, the transactions, the whole rotten performance. This was my chance. I moved silently, away from the party, up the main staircase. The music and laughter faded below me, replaced by the ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall. The upstairs hallway was dark and cold. Serena's office was at the far end. The door was, as Lyra said, locked. My hand was steady. I used the tiny silver key. It turned silently in the lock of her desk drawer. Inside, beneath a box of personalized stationery, was a single, heavy brass key. I took it. It slid into the main door lock. A heavy thunk as the deadbolt disengaged. I slipped inside, locking the door behind me. The room was immaculate, cold and gray, smelling faintly of her perfume. Her silver laptop was on the desk, sleeping. I touched the trackpad. The screen glowed. I typed, 1224 Gala. It opened. No hesitation. Her arrogance was my greatest asset. Her entire digital life was there. I didn't have time to browse. I had targets. I opened her email. The calendar was on the screen. Just as Lyra had warned. An entry for today, marked in red. Noel Gala, 2024. The attached schedule was meticulous. 5:30 p.m. Perfect photo. Complete by 6:30. 8:30 p.m. Gala speech. Grant. 8:40 p.m. Surprise announcement. Serena and Lyra's scholarship address. I closed the calendar. I went to her local file system. I found the folder labeled Riverglass. It wasn't encrypted. Inside, a subfolder. Donors. I clicked it. It was an Excel spreadsheet. I opened it. It wasn't a list of wealthy philanthropists. It was a list of her vendors. The caterer who was downstairs right now. The florist who provided the $2,500 centerpieces. The snowplow guy. The construction company that had rebuilt the patio last summer. She had them all listed, with donation amounts next to their names. Amounts that were suspiciously, identically close to the invoices she'd paid them. She was faking her donor list. claiming her party and home improvement expenses as charitable contributions from fake sources. My hands were moving fast. I pulled the blank USB drive from my boot. I plugged it in. I was not selective. I dragged the entire Riverglass folder. I dragged her finances folder. I dragged her personal folder. I went into her email and exported the entire archive. I was copying her entire digital life. The progress bar crawled. 10%, 20%. While it copied, I scanned her email drafts. I saw correspondence with banks, with her consulting firm, Silver Slate. And then I saw it, a draft, not sent, addressed to a name I didn't recognize. R. Vinter, Real Estate Law. The subject line was clear. Ellison Cottage, status. My blood froze. I clicked the draft. My hands were shaking, just once. R. Vinter, the draft began. Following up on our conversation, I have attached the signed affidavits from Mr. Ellison regarding his primary wishes. We need to proceed with the action to process Nora Ellison's disinheritance from the Ellison Cottage Trust, citing the disloyalty and abandonment clause we discussed. We need this filed before the end of the year, so we can move forward with the liquidation in Q1. Please confirm receipt. She was stealing my grandmother's house. She was systematically, legally, trying to erase me from my own family, from my own history, using my absence, the absence she had engineered, as the legal weapon. The progress bar on the file transfer hit 99%, 100%, complete. I pulled the drive. I slid it into my pocket. I logged out of the laptop. I wiped the keyboard, the desk, the doorknob, the key. I unlocked the door, slipped out, and relocked it from the outside. I put the brass key back in the drawer and locked it with the tiny silver key. I slid the silver key under the office door. Lyra could retrieve it later, or not. It didn't matter. I stood in the cold, dark hallway. My heart was not hammering. It was beating. Slow and steady and even. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, absolute clarity. This was never just about money. This was about erasure. And she had just handed me the script for the final scene. I walked back upstairs, the USB drive a heavy, solid weight in my pocket. The tiny silver key was a ghost under the office door. The entire house was a stage, and I had just stolen the director's script and production notes. Now, I had to change the play. The first step was to get out of costume. I went to the guest room where I had left my bag. The Kelly green wool sweater was suffocating, a uniform of false compliance. I pulled it over my head, the itchy fibers scraping against my skin, against the raw, stinging line on my cheek. I threw the sweater onto the bed, a symbol of the role I was now refusing to play. It was a costume for a person who was willing to be silent, to be managed, to be part of a perfect picture at the cost of her own skin. That person was not me, not anymore. I opened my bag and pulled out my own clothes, a simple, black, cashmere blend turtleneck. It was sleek, comfortable, and practical. It was armor. As I pulled it on, the soft, dark fabric felt like my own skin returning. It was anonymous, professional, and it was mine. I tucked it into my dark jeans, laced my boots tight. The person in the mirror was no longer a victim in a terrible sweater. She was an engineer. She was an auditor. And she was here to work. My next stop was the living room. The party was in full flow. The noise a perfect cover. My father had left the camera on its tripod, a forgotten prop from the first act. Serena was holding court by the fireplace, her voice bright and commanding. I walked over to the tripod, my movements casual. "Dad," I called out, my voice warm. "This is in the way. Do you want me to move it?" He waved a hand, a half-full glass of scotch in it. "Oh, leave it, Nora. We might take some more later, for the candid shots." "Good idea," I said. I fiddled with the camera's body, my back to the room. My fingers found the settings dial. I turned it from the still mode, with its single, blinding flash, to the video mode. A small red dot appeared on the screen. I adjusted the focus, a manual twist, to capture the entire fireplace, the sofa, and the central space where the family was gathered. The angle was wide, perfect. Then, my hand went to the side slot. I ejected the small memory card he had been using, the one with the perfect photo on it. I slipped it into my pocket. In its place, I inserted my own, a professional grade, high-speed, 128-gigabyte card. It was blank. It was hungry. I turned the camera slightly, as if just tidying up, until the lens was aimed directly at the heart of the room. It was now my primary witness. With that set, I moved to the hallway and pulled out my real phone, the personal one I had kept in my bag. Serena had my decoy. I had my weapon. I pulled up a new message to Mara Keene. Mara was lead in-house counsel at my company in Harbor City, a woman who ate flawed contracts for breakfast. We were not just colleagues. We were allies. My fingers moved quickly. The text precise, professional, a dead man's switch. Mara, Package A is live. I am on site. If you do not receive a stand-down code from me by 8:30 p.m., that is, in 1 hour, execute delivery to the Vermont State Tax Authority and the Attorney General's office. Confirm receipt. My phone buzzed less than 10 seconds later. Mara did not waste time. Confirmed. Clock is running. Give them hell. Nora. I slipped the phone into my back pocket. The timer had started. In 1 hour. If I failed, if Serena stopped me, the entire digital archive I had stolen would be delivered to the two agencies that could tear her paper empire apart. I was no longer working without a net. I walked toward the kitchen. The pen recorder was still on the counter. Its blue light pulse long since timed out, but its microphone was still active, soaking up every word. Serena was in the kitchen now, directing a caterer, her back to me. I walked up, my footsteps silent. I waited. She sensed me and turned, her eyes narrowing. What do you want, Nora? The cocoa wasn't good enough for you? I reached into the pocket of my puffer jacket, the one I had left on a chair. My fingers closed around the thick, cream-colored bank envelope. The bribe. I pulled it out. I did not hold it out to her. I simply tossed it, flat, onto the marble counter between us, next to her planner. It landed with a soft, heavy thud. I think you dropped this, I said, my voice low and clear. Her eyes flashed, pure, hot fury. She glanced around. The caterers were busy, but they were in the room. I told you, she hissed. That was a gift. For your trouble. I know what it was, I said, leaning in just slightly. And it's a problem. A problem for you? No, a problem for the picture, I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. You're all about the brand. Serena, the image, this. I tapped the envelope with my one finger. This makes the Christmas photo look so transactional, so dirty. It just ruins the whole aesthetic. Don't you think? I had used her own language against her. Dirty, transactional, aesthetic. I saw the words land, saw the color rise in her neck. She was trapped. She could not make a scene in front of the staff. She could not acknowledge what the envelope was. She could not take it back, because that would be admitting to the bribe. And she could not leave it there, a piece of evidence on her own counter. I had checkmated her, in a 2-foot square of her own kitchen. Her rage was so potent, I could almost smell it, but she was a professional. She took a breath, and the mask of the gracious hostess snapped back into place, this time with a terrifying, porcelain-bright smile. You are so right. Nora, she said, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. My mistake. You're so focused on ethics, on what's clean. That's wonderful, truly. She picked up the envelope and, with a look of utter contempt, shredded it in half and dropped it into the waste disposal. Flicking the switch, the machine roared to life, a sudden, violent mechanical scream that made the caterers jump. She was destroying the evidence. I had not expected that, but it didn't matter. The recording of our conversation was complete. When the grinding stopped, she turned back to me, her smile wider, more dangerous. She had changed tactics. If I wanted to be ethical, she would give me the stage to prove it. In that case, she said, her voice now loud enough for the room to hear. "You'll be the perfect person to help me. We're about to make the grand announcement about the Riverglass Trust, about Lyra's scholarship. Grant is going to say a few words, and then you can contribute. You can give a little speech of your own about what family and legacy truly mean to you." It was a trap, a brilliant, vicious trap. She was forcing me into the spotlight. She was daring me to speak, knowing that if I said one word against her, the entire family would see me as the ungrateful, unstable daughter who ruined Christmas. She was handing me a shovel, daring me to dig my own grave. I smiled back. I would be honored. "Serena, I can't think of anything I'd rather talk about." "Wonderful," she clapped. A sharp, theatrical sound. Everyone, she called, gliding back into the living room, her energy high. "A moment. My husband, Grant, has something he'd like to say." My father, who had been refilling his scotch, looked up, startled, but pleased to be given the stage. He moved to the center of the room, by the fireplace, directly into the camera's perfectly framed shot. He raised his glass. The room hushed. "Well," he began, his voice thick and booming. "Thank you, Serena. Thank you all for being here. It means the world," he beamed, a man who believed his own performance. "The Ellison family has always been a beacon in this community, a shining light of generosity and strength." As he spoke, I moved. I walked calmly to the tripod. I reached out and pressed the small, red record button. A red light glowed on the camera's body. It was rolling. My father, in his self-aggrandizing speech, had just become my opening witness. I didn't let him finish. As he paused to take a drink, I stepped forward, clapping my hands together, my applause warm and supportive. "Thank you, Dad," I called out, my voice bright and engaging. The perfect MC. The room turned to me. I had just stolen his spotlight, but I had done it with a smile. That was so beautiful. A beacon. I love that. I walked to the center of the room. Right next to him, I was in the shot. Perfect. "And you know," I continued, my voice resonating with false nostalgia, "in honor of what Dad just said about family and legacy and being a beacon, I have a little something I wanted to share, a small gift I prepared, for all of us." I saw Serena's eyes narrow. This was not her plan. I was off script. "It's just a little trip down memory lane. If everyone could you gather around the tree? Right here by the fireplace? I want you all to see." They moved. A murmur of curiosity. They were expecting a touching Christmas present. I picked up the remote for the massive smart TV mounted over the fireplace. I had already connected my laptop, which I'd retrieved from my bag and hidden behind a stack of art books. I clicked the remote. The screen, which had been showing a digital painting of a winter scene, flickered to life. I had not been lying. It was a slideshow. I had titled it Ellison Memories. The first image appeared, and the room let out a collective, soft sigh. It was my grandmother, years ago, in the kitchen at Ellison Cottage, her hands covered in flour, laughing. The next slide, the cottage itself, in summer, covered in ivy. The next, me, age 10, on my father's shoulders, both of us grinning, before his grief had hollowed him out. The next, Lyra as a baby. The next, all the cousins. 20 years ago, a tangle of limbs on the old dock. The music I'd chosen was a soft, instrumental version of a folk song my grandmother used to hum. It was beautiful. It was nostalgic. It was a surgical strike at the heart of their shared memory. I was reminding them of what was real, of what they had lost, of what Serena had paved over. "Oh, Nora," an aunt whispered, dabbing her eye. This is just so lovely." I saw Serena. Even she was smiling, a tight, controlled smile of approval. She thought this was my surrender. She thought this was my peace offering. She was reclaiming her role as the unstable daughter. By presenting this touching, harmless tribute, she believed she had won. As the slideshow continued, Lyra, who had been standing at the back of the room, her eyes wide, drifted toward me. She had come up from the basement, drawn by the silence, then the music. She watched the screen, her face a mixture of wonder and fear, as the final image, a perfect, golden hour photo of the cottage, lingered on the screen. She slipped her cold hand into mine. I squeezed it. She squeezed back. It was a public, physical declaration. The room saw it. Serena saw it. The camera saw it. The music faded. The last photo stayed on the screen. The room was perfectly silent, wrapped in a warm, nostalgic hush. I picked up the smart remote for the room's environment system. With my thumb, I pressed the evening scene button. The bright overhead lights dimmed to a soft, warm glow, leaving only the lamps, the dancing lights from the Christmas tree, and the flickering, golden light of the gas fireplace. The atmosphere was intimate, expectant. Everyone was leaning in, waiting for my touching conclusion. Serena, her face a mask of perfect, emotional grace, dabbed a single, theatrical tear from her eye. She looked at me and nodded, a queen bestowing her approval. She had no idea what was queued up. My thumb was resting on the next button of the slideshow remote, the next file, the one I had created in the Snowcap Inn, the one I had loaded with the data from the bank, the files from her own laptop, the one I had titled, simply, Transparency and Family. The stage was set, the lighting was perfect, the audience was captive, and the script was about to change. The warm, nostalgic photograph of Ellison Cottage lingered on the screen. A ghost of a memory. The room was hushed, wrapped in a soft, sad comfort. Lyra's hand was a small, cold bird in mine. Serena was smiling, a look of placid, benevolent approval on her face. She thought I had surrendered, that this slideshow was my white flag. She thought she had won. My thumb pressed the next button on the remote. The transition was a visual shock. The warm, sun-drenched photo of the cottage vanished, replaced by a stark black screen with two white boxes. It was a corporate flowchart, clean, cold, and brutal. In the left box, the words, Riverglass Trust. In the right box, Silver Slate LLC, a single, thick, red arrow pointed from one to the other. The room's atmosphere fractured. I heard a confused murmur. My voice, when I spoke, was not the voice of the nostalgic host. It was the voice I used at Vireo Diagnostics, the one I used to read a technical brief. It was cold, precise, and devoid of emotion. This, I said, is the transparency portion of the evening. The first slide is a simple visualization of cash flow. I saw Serena's smile tighten, the muscles in her jaw tensing. She did not understand, not yet. I clicked next. The screen was filled with a high-resolution scan of a North Bank Credit Union statement. The logo was clear. The account name was clear. The Riverglass Trust. This is the public disclosure statement, obtained this morning at 9:14 a.m. under the Vermont Transparency Statute, Section 449.b. I picked up the laser pointer from the table, a small red dot appearing on the screen. You will see the incoming deposits, sourced from community fundraisers and my, as we'll see later, private loans. I moved the dot, tracing a column. And here you see the expenditures, a repeating pattern, a wire transfer last week for $180,000, a transfer last month for $50,000, all to the same recipient. The red dot landed on the memo column. The memo, for every single transaction, is the same. Consulting. I clicked next. The screen split. On the left, the official business filing for Silver Slate LLC. On the right, a scanned document. Silver Slate LLC, I continued, my voice perfectly level, is a domestic shell corporation, registered in Delaware. It has no employees. It has no public-facing business. It has one managing partner. The red dot moved from the bank statement to the business filing, landing on a single, typed name, S. Ellison. A sharp gasp came from an aunt in the front row. My father, I noted, had stopped breathing. "The document on the right," I said, moving the laser, "is not public. It is an internal ambassador contract between the Riverglass Trust and a minor." I used the remote to zoom, the text blurring and then sharpening, focusing on a single, highlighted paragraph. I read it aloud. "All income, revenue, and associated likeness fees generated by the ambassador," I read, "are to be collected and managed by the trust. The trust shall retain 70% of all gross earnings for management services, administrative fees, and scholarship fund contributions." I let the words hang in the air. The room was deathly quiet. I zoomed out. The ambassador, whose signature is at the bottom, is my sister, Lyra. This is how Serena, as manager of the trust, legally siphons 70% of her own daughter's modeling income. "Oh my God," a cousin whispered. 70%? Another repeated, his voice full of shock. I added the final piece. I also confirmed, this morning, that the Riverglass Trust has never been registered as a 501c3 or any other qualifying charitable organization within the state of Vermont. It solicits public donations, but it is, by legal definition, a private bank account controlled by Serena, dressed up as a community fund. "Turn it off." The roar came from my father. His face was a dark, mottled purple. He was on his feet, his Scotch glass held halfway to his mouth. "Nora," I said, "turn it off. This is libel. You're ruining Christmas." "I'm not finished, Dad," I said, and clicked Next. The contracts vanished. Now, the screen showed an email, a perfect, high-resolution screenshot of a draft, taken from Serena's laptop less than an hour ago. "This is a draft, prepared by Serena, addressed to her real estate attorney. It is dated today." The laser dot was back, tracing the lines of the text as I read. "We need to proceed with the action to process Nora Ellison's disinheritance from the Ellison Cottage Trust. Citing the disloyalty and abandonment clause we discussed, we need this filed before the end of the year, so we can move forward with the liquidation in Q1. Please confirm receipt, and avoid the eldest child." The silence in the room was now heavy, suffocating. This was not an abstract shell company. This was Grandma's house. This was their history. "Forgery!" Serena's voice was a high, brittle scream. She was on her feet, her face pale, her hands clenched. "That is a forgery! She's faking this! You are a hateful, jealous, sick child. You forged that." "I was worried you'd say that," I said. My voice was calm. I had prepared for this. "I was worried you'd claim I fabricated the data." I clicked Next. The screen changed again. On the left, a zoomed-in, high-resolution image of the electronic signature block on the bottom of that email draft. On the right, a high-resolution scan of the Christmas card invitation Serena had mailed to everyone in this very room. I zoomed in on her physical, flowing signature from the bottom of that card. "The signature on the left," I said, "is the digital authorization for the email. The one on the right is the one you all received. I would ask you to compare the stroke variation, the unique ligature in the S and the E, the upward slant of the final N. They are biometric matches. It is your signature, Serena, undeniable." My uncle in the back row, a man who rarely spoke, slowly reached into his suit jacket. He pulled out the very card. He held it up to the light, squinted at it, and then looked at the screen. He did not say a word. He just folded the card, put it back in his pocket, and stared at Serena. The accusation of forgery died. Serena was breathing fast, her chest rising and falling. She was trapped. And into that vacuum, a small, trembling voice spoke. "It's not fake." Every head in the room, including mine, snapped to Lyra. She was standing next to me, her hand still in mine, but she had stepped forward, just slightly. "It's not fake," she repeated, her voice gaining strength. Mom, she did. She made me sign the contract. She told me it was for taxes." She turned, her eyes, wet with tears, finding Serena. And the writing camp, the one I won the scholarship to. Serena's eyes were wide, a look of pure panic on her face. Lyra, darling, that's not what happened. We discussed. No! Lyra's voice was a cry, sharp and full of a pain I had never heard from her. You told me I couldn't go. You said the family photos were more important. You said my talent was for pictures, not for words. You made me miss it. You made me miss it so I could fill your stupid fund. The silence that fell in the room was absolute. It was not just quiet. It was a void. It was the heavy sound-dampening pressure of a deep snowfall. A silence so profound you could hear your own heartbeat. Lyra, in one true, honest outburst, had just confirmed everything. I did not need to say another word, but I had 2 pieces of data left. I have not, I said, my voice dropping, mentioned the physical enforcement, the methods used to ensure this perfect family stays in line, because I don't need to. I clicked next. The screen was no longer text. It was a photograph, a high-resolution, clinically lit, close-up of my own face, my cheek, the 2 fresh, parallel, angry red lines, one of them beaded with blood, raked from my cheekbone to my jaw. It was brutal. It was undeniable. I heard my aunt gasp and say, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. This photograph, I stated, my voice flat, was taken by me, on my personal phone, in the guest bathroom, at 5:58 p.m., approximately 20 minutes ago. I clicked next, a simple white-on-black text slide, like a title card. Image timestamp, December 24th, 5:58 p.m., location, Ellison House. I let that sink in. The perfect photo was at 5:30. The scratch on my face was from Serena's adjustment just before. The one on the stairs was just a preview. This was the receipt. And finally, I said, I clicked to the last slide. It was the second mortgage document for the Ellison cottage, the one that had started this all. The signatures were clear. Grant Ellison, Serena Ellison. I used the laser pointer one last time. I did not trace their names. I traced the line item that said, Purpose of Loan. The box was not blank. In small, clear type, it said, Working Capital. Not a medical expense, I said. Not a family emergency, working capital, for a shell company, using my grandmother's home as collateral. I turned off the laser. The presentation was over. The screen went black, but the images were burned into their minds. I turned to face the room, my family. The camera on the tripod, I knew, was still rolling, its red light a single, unwavering eye, capturing every stunned, pale, horrified face. Serena was shaking, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. My father had collapsed into his chair. He looked 100 years old. This, I said, and my voice was the only sound in the room, is not family. This is not legacy. This is not trust. I looked at Serena. I looked at my father. This is adult familial abuse. This is financial exploitation. And this, I said, holding up the remote, is the end of the performance. The black screen of the television was a mirror, reflecting the pale, stunned faces of my family. The video camera's red light was an unwavering, silent eye, still recording. Lyra's hand was a small, cold anchor in mine. My father was a collapsed shape in his armchair, his face gray. Serena was vibrating, her hands clenched at her sides, her face a mask of such profound, pure hatred that it was almost beautiful in its honesty. The silence in the room was a vacuum, a pressurized void waiting to be filled. I would fill it, not with accusations, not with rage. I would fill it with procedure. This is not a negotiation, I said. My voice was cold, flat, and loud in the absolute quiet. It was the voice I used at Vireo, the voice I used to explain a critical, irreversible failure in a piece of machinery. This is not a discussion. This is what happens next. I looked directly at Serena. She was the managing partner of this disaster. She would hear the terms first. I I held up a single finger, a simple, pedagogical gesture. You will sign a full, immediate quit-claim deed, returning the title of Ellison Cottage to a new, irrevocable trust. That trust will be in Lyra's name and mine, and it will be managed by an independent executor from Harbor and Pine Advisory. You will also sign a full dissolution of your signatory powers over any and all Ellison family assets. I let that sink in. You have 48 hours, until December 26th, at 6 p.m., to have those executed documents on my lawyer's desk. 2. My gaze did not waver. Lyra is released, immediately and permanently, from the fraudulent ambassador contract. Her earnings, past and future, are hers. She will attend the writing camp this spring. She will choose her own college. She will choose her own path. You will not force her to be a model, an ambassador, or a prop for any of your events, ever again. Her future is no longer a line item in your budget. Lyra squeezed my hand. A sharp, sudden pressure of pure, terrified relief. 3, I continued, my rhythm steady, methodical. The Riverglass Trust, or whatever legal entity you've named it, will be dissolved by close of business. January 31st, every cent remaining in that account, and I have the balance from this morning. Serena, so do not try to move it, will be transferred, not back to you, not to Dad. It will be donated, in a single cashier's check, to the Snowline Care Foundation. An aunt in the back row murmured, Snowline Care? That's the Elder Care Fund. Yes, I said, my voice cutting her off. The one that helps seniors whose insurance has paperwork glitches. It's the fund that should have paid for Grandma's care. It seems only appropriate that her money finally ends up where it was always supposed to go. 4. I saw Serena's lip curl. I ignored it. You will write a public letter of apology, not a vague, corporate, we regret statement, a detailed admission. It will be sent to every person on your donor list, the real ones, and the fake ones you invented from your vendor list. You will apologize for soliciting fraudulent donations and for misrepresenting the fund's purpose. I have already drafted the letter. You will sign it. I turned, for the first time, to my father. He flinched, as if expecting a physical blow. He looked small, a shell of a man, his face puffy and wet. 5. This is for you. Dad. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot and pleading. You will not sign another check, another loan, or another legal document without oversight. You will engage, for a period of no less than 12 months, the services of an independent financial counselor. I have already selected the firm, Harbor and Pine Advisory. They are based in Harbor City. They will conduct a full audit of your remaining assets, establish a real, enforceable budget, and untangle you from her. You will, for the first time in a decade, be accountable for your own finances. I let the 5 points settle. The air in the room was thick with the weight of them. The heat from the fireplace felt oppressive. My father was the one who broke the silence, his voice a reedy whisper. And if we don't? If we just say no? I pulled my personal phone from my back pocket. The decoy phone was still on Serena's silver tray in the foyer. This one was my weapon. If you say no, I said, holding the phone up for them to see. Then I used the alternative. My colleague at Vireo's legal department, Mara Keene, is waiting. She has a package. It contains everything you saw tonight, the bank statements, the shell company filings, the internal emails, the donor list, the 70% contract you had Lyra sign, the draft email about the cottage disinheritance, the high-resolution time-stamped photo of my face. I paused, and my gaze locked on Serena. It also contains the full, unedited audio recording from the pen I left on your kitchen counter for the past hour, the recording of your donor payoffs, the recording of you trying to bribe me, the recording of you shredding the evidence in the garbage disposal. Serena's face went from pale to the color of ash. She had forgotten the pen. If I do not send Mara a stand-down code by 8:30 p.m. tonight, I continued, she has standing instructions. She will forward that entire package to the Vermont State Tax Authority, the Banking Commission, the IRS, and the State Attorney General's office. She will also send the insurance fraud evidence regarding my grandmother's policy to the insurer's internal investigations unit. You will not be dealing with an angry daughter. Dad, you will be dealing with a federal investigation. Your performance will be over. You will be ruined. And you, I looked at him, will be named as an accomplice to conspiracy to commit fraud. I put the phone back in my pocket. The clock was ticking. I want to be very clear, I said, my voice low. This is not about money. I do not want a cent of it. I looked at the opulent, suffocating room, at the tinsel and the perfect, dead tree. This is about retrieval. I am here to take back what does not, and never did, belong to you. You do not own Lyra. You do not own my grandmother's house. And you do not own the Ellison name. You just rented it. And the lease is up. Serena, who had been frozen, finally found her voice. It was not a shout. It was a low, venomous hiss, full of a lifetime of compressed rage. You, creature, she spat the word at me. You would do this? You would stand there, in your father's home, and destroy this family on Christmas Eve? It was her last card, the guilt, the shame, the appeal to the very family that had been her shield and her weapon for a decade. The room turned. I could feel the relatives waver. She was right. It was Christmas Eve. This was ugly. This was not how things were done. I did not waver. I met her hateful gaze with a cold, clear calm. You destroyed this family, Serena, I said, my voice quiet, but it carried in the silence. You just did it slowly, behind locked doors, with signatures and whispers. You did it with fake smiles and second mortgages, and by hurting your children, I'm just turning on the lights. I looked at my father, at the shell of the man he had become, at the man who had chirped cheeks while I was bleeding. I am not destroying this family, I said. I am saving it, or at least what's left of it, if it can even be saved. This was the moment, the final pivot. All the evidence in the world did not matter if the man who signed the checks, the man who let it all happen, refused to see it. Every eye in the room, the uncles, the aunts, Lyra, Serena, and me, turned to my father. He was the weak link. He was the foundation. He looked at Serena, his wife, the woman who had managed his life, the woman he had let hurt his children. I saw the terror in his eyes. He was terrified of her rage, of the life he would have if she was gone. Then he looked at me, his daughter. He saw the cold, unyielding resolve. He saw the evidence on the black screen. He saw the high-resolution photograph of my bleeding face. He looked at Lyra, who was openly weeping now, her hand still holding mine like a lifeline. He looked at Serena, then back at me. He was a man trapped between his own weakness and the consequences of his complicity. He was a man caught between the woman who controlled him and the daughter who had just exposed him. Grant, Serena said, her voice dropping, suddenly soft, pleading. Grant, darling, don't listen to her. She's twisting everything. She's unstable. We can fix this. Just us, in the family. Dad, I said, my voice firm. The deadline is 8:30 p.m. The clock is running. He was paralyzed. He was a man drowning. And both of us were holding out a hand. One offered a familiar, comfortable poison. The other offered a painful, terrifying antidote. He looked at the floor, his hands twisting in his lap, his mouth moving, but no words coming out. He was trying to find a third option, a way to appease us both, a way to make this all go away. And in that terrible, stretched-out silence, a new sound cut through the room, clear, cold, and metallic. From outside, in the sharp night air, the bells from the steeple at St. Jude's, the church they had just attended for their performance of faith, began to ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was 6:00 p.m., the exact time Serena had scheduled for kitchen service begins on her itinerary, the moment the perfect photo was supposed to be complete, the moment her gala was meant to truly begin. The bell was a timer, marking the end of her schedule and the start of mine. The church bells faded, their 6 chimes dissolving into the sharp, cold night. The silence they left behind was heavier, more profound than before. The party was over. The performance had been irrevocably cancelled. It was my Uncle Robert, the one who had checked his invitation against the screen, who moved first. He was a quiet man, a banker, and he understood numbers. He did not look at Serena. He did not look at my father. He looked at me. A brief, sharp nod of what might have been respect, or perhaps just acknowledgement. He walked over to his wife, my Aunt Clara, and touched her elbow. "Clara," he said, his voice quiet but firm in the small room. "Get your coat. We're leaving." "But Robert, the dinner," she began, her voice a flustered whisper. "We are leaving, now." And just like that, the spell broke. It was a silent, mass exodus. There were no fake goodbyes, no air kisses for Serena, no handshakes for Grant, just a quiet, sudden scramble for coats, purses, and boots. They moved with the efficient, wordless urgency of people escaping a building just before the fire alarm becomes a full-blown inferno. They did not speak. They did not make eye contact with the core family. They simply fled. They wanted no part of this. They were not witnesses. They were audience members, and the show was too real, too ugly. They were out the door in under 3 minutes. The thud of the heavy oak door swinging shut was the loudest sound in the house. And then there were 4. The living room, which had been staged for a party of 30, was now a vast, empty stage. The discarded napkins, the half-empty glasses, the plates of uneaten gingerbread men. They were props from a play that had collapsed in its final act. The silence that rushed in was deafening, broken only by 3 sounds: the high, thin whistle of the wind as it hammered against the north-facing windows, the incessant, mechanical tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hall, measuring out the seconds of my deadline, and the wet, ragged sound of my father, Grant, trying to breathe. He was still in his armchair by the fire, a collapsed ruin. He was holding his empty scotch glass in both hands, staring into it as if it held an answer. His entire body was shaking. A fine, high-frequency tremor. It was the scotch. Yes, but it was more. It was the vibration of a man whose entire foundation, his entire reality, had been pulverized in the last 10 minutes. He was a man shaking from the shock of truth. Serena moved first. Her rage had cooled, calcified into something harder, more pragmatic. This was a negotiation. She walked toward the center of the room, her back straight, her composure a stunning, terrifying act of will. She did not look at me. She looked at my father. "Grant," she said, her voice low, smooth, and reasonable. It was the voice she used on bank managers. "Grant, this is a disaster. This is a family matter. It has been mishandled by an emotional, unstable child." She flicked her eyes at me, a look of pure contempt. I said nothing. The camera's red light was still on. The pen on the kitchen counter was still listening. "This is not," she continued, "something for the public. This is not for lawyers or tax authorities. This is an internal affair." She was trying to reestablish the narrative, to shrink the boundaries of the crime scene. We will sit down, as a family, we will draft an agreement, a private arrangement, something that maintains dignity for everyone." Dignity. The word was a calculated insult. I almost laughed. "No," I said. My voice, quiet, cut her off. She turned, slowly, to face me. "There is no private arrangement, Serena," I said, my voice as cold and clear as the night air outside. "There is no language that will cover this up. There is no dignity in fraud. I gave you the terms. They are not negotiable. They are not suggestions. They are the conditions of your surrender. You will accept them, or I will send the package. There is no third option." Serena's eyes narrowed. "You will not." "Mom?" The small voice shattered the tension. It was Lyra. She had not let go of my hand. She was looking at my father, her eyes filled with a terrifying, fragile courage. "Dad?" She tried again. He looked up, his eyes unfocused, lost. Lyra let go of my hand. She walked over to him, her movements small, hesitant. She reached into the back pocket of her jeans, the same pocket she had pulled the key from. She pulled out a small, folded, slightly crumpled piece of paper, a brochure. She unfolded it, her hands shaking, and held it out to him. It was the application, the one with the scholarship confirmation, for the Young Writers' Camp. I still want to go," Lyra whispered, her voice cracking, but she did not cry. "The spring session. I've been saving to pay back the scholarship, so I could just go." Grant stared at the piece of paper. He did not take it. He stared at it as if it were an artifact from a language he did not understand. He looked at the bright, cheerful logo of the camp, at the picture of students sitting under a tree with notebooks. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her. Perhaps for the first time in years. This was not a prop. This was not a doll in a green sweater. This was a person, with a talent, with a desire, with a life that he had allowed to be strip-mined for a lookbook. I watched his face. I saw the recognition. I saw the deep, profound, gut punch of shame. How long had it been since he had actually listened to his youngest child? How long had it been since he had seen her as anything other than a part of Serena's perfect set dressing? The ticket in her hand was a mirror, and in it, he finally saw his own reflection. He saw the abject failure of his own fatherhood. Serena saw she was losing him. Her voice turned sharp. "Lyra, put that away. This is not the time for your little hobbies. We are discussing something important." "This is important," Lyra cried, her voice rising. "Enough," Serena snapped. She turned, her back to us, and walked to the bar. She pulled a phone, her real phone, from a charging port, hidden beneath the counter. She stabbed a number on the screen and held it to her ear. Her voice was a low, urgent murmur. "Richard?" "Yes, it's Serena. I am calling about the Ellison Trust. We have a complication. Yes, a hostile action. I need you to... No, I need a preliminary injunction, filed tonight." She was calling her lawyer, the real estate lawyer, R. Vinter. She was trying to build a legal firewall. Even now, she was trying to fight. I let her. It was pointless. A drowning woman trying to file a lawsuit against the ocean. It was all being recorded. I turned back to my father. He was still staring at the brochure, which Lyra had not moved. His face was a mask of grief. I walked over to him. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "She offered me money, Dad," I said, my voice just loud enough for him, and Lyra, and the microphones, to hear. Right after she cut my face, before the photo, when I told her what I knew, she tried to bribe me. She had a thick bank envelope, right in her pocket, ready for me. "Hush money," she called it. He looked up, his eyes hollow. "I didn't take it. I wondered what the price was. How much does a daughter's silence cost? Dad, how much is a perfect, smiling Christmas photo worth to you? Is it worth 100,000? Is it worth my grandmother's house? Is it worth 70% of Lyra's entire future?" The wind howled, a low, grieving sound, as if the house itself were in pain. I thought, just for a second, of the cottage, of the smell of cinnamon and old wood, of my grandmother's hands, her knuckles swollen with arthritis, but her grip strong as she taught me to knead dough. I remembered her, and the thought was a core of steel in my back. I turned to Lyra, who was standing, small and brave, in the face of her father's collapse and her mother's legal maneuvering. I leaned in and spoke, my voice a whisper that was only for her. "Listen to me, Lyra. No matter what happens in this room, no matter what he says or what she does, if it all falls apart, you are safe. I have a spare room in Harbor City. It's not big, but it has a desk, and the window looks out over the water. It's yours. As long as you need it, I will not leave you here." She didn't cry. She just nodded. A single, sharp dip of her chin, and the terror in her eyes receded. Just a little. She had a lifeline. And then, Grant moved. It was not a slow hesitation. He stood up. He stood up so fast. His empty Scotch glass clattered to the marble floor, a sharp, final crack that was not a break. He stood, for the first time, to his full height. He was a tall man, and he had been stooped for a decade. He was no longer looking at the floor. He was looking at his wife. Serena was still on the phone, her back to him. An immediate restraining order, on the grounds of harassment and... Serena. His voice was not a shout. It was not a plea. It was a command. It was a voice I had not heard since before my mother died. It was the voice of Grant Ellison, the man who used to be. She froze. Her call was over. She turned, slowly, the phone in her hand. "Serna," he said again, and his voice was raw, shaking not with weakness, but with a new, terrifying rage. My God, Serena, we have gone too far." Serena's face, for 1 second, showed genuine shock. He had never, not once, taken a tone with her. He had never contradicted her. He was her prop, her asset, her weak-willed enabler, and he was malfunctioning. Her shock hardened, instantly, into pure, undiluted contempt. Her eyes, her beautiful cold eyes, narrowed into slits. "Do not," she hissed, her voice a low, lethal vibration. "Take that tone with me. Grant, you are weak. You were nothing. You were a grieving, incompetent mess when I found you. I built this. I built this image. I built this life. I built you. You would be nothing without me." "And what am I now?" he whispered, the question hanging in the air. The vibration was silent, but I felt it, a sharp, insistent buzz in my back pocket. Serena and Grant were locked in their first, and possibly last, real confrontation. They did not see me. They did not see me slide my hand into my pocket, my fingers closing around the phone. I brought it out, keeping it low. The screen was bright. A new message, from Mara. 8:10 p.m. Packages staged. Files are uploaded. Servers are standing by, ready to send, awaiting your orders. Nora. Mara's text message was a silent, vibrating witness in my hand. Ready to send, awaiting your orders. Serena saw the phone. She saw the bright screen, the text message. She saw my face. She had lost the narrative. She had lost the audience. She had lost her husband. And now, she was about to lose her empire. Her face, which had been a mask of cold contempt, crumpled. It did not crumple into sadness. It crumpled into pure, unadulterated rage. Her entire life's work, her performance, was being dismantled by a single, blinking cursor on a server in Maine. She did not scream. She lunged. She lunged at me, her hands clawed, aiming not for the television remote, but for the phone in my hand. That was the real bomb. The remote only controlled the past. The phone controlled the future. She never reached me. A heavy, solid force intercepted her. My father. He had moved with a speed I had not seen in him in 20 years. His body physically planting itself between his wife and his daughter. His hands, big and shaking, grabbed her arms at the biceps. It was not a gentle restraint. It was a hard, definitive stop. Stop! His voice was broken, a deep, ragged sound, as if the word itself had been torn from his throat. Serena froze. Her momentum stopped. She was panting, her eyes wild, looking at her husband as if he were a stranger. He had, in that single, protective instant, become someone she had never met. "Stop," he said again, his voice cracking. "Just stop." I did not move. I did not flinch. My hand, the one holding the television remote, was steady. "You're right to stop her. Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the heavy, panting silence. Because I have one last file, the one I saved, the one that started this whole evening. I raised the remote. I clicked the previous button. The black screen, which had been mirroring my presentation, flickered. It did not go back to the bank statements. It went back to the very first photo I had taken tonight. The photo from the tripod, the one we had taken less than 2 hours ago, the one I had pulled from the camera's memory card, the perfect Christmas photo. The screen filled with our faces, all of us, clad in that hideous Kelly green wool, all of us, smiling, Grant, beaming, Serena, radiant, her hand on his chest, Lyra, her eyes hollow, and me, on the edge, my smile wide, my teeth showing. The image was perfect, glossy, a magazine cover. Then, I pressed the zoom button. I moved the cursor. It landed on my face. I clicked. The screen reframed, the pixels rearranging, until the only thing in the world, the only thing filling that 60-inch screen, was my cheek. The two fresh, parallel, angry red lines, one of them beaded with dark, coagulating blood, raked from my cheekbone to my jaw. The glint of her diamond had left a signature. "This," I asked, my voice very quiet, "is the family you wanted to save, Dad? This is the one you were willing to protect?" I let the image hang in the air, a grotesque billboard of our family's truth. "A beautiful picture," I said, "and a very, very ugly truth. This is the cost of your peace, Serena. This is the price of one perfect photo, paid for in skin." Serena, still in my father's grip, found her voice. She had one last narrative to spin, one last performance. "He won't believe you," she shrieked, the sound high and brittle. "She's lying. She's crazy. She did it to herself. She's always been jealous. She's always been unstable. Grant, darling, look at her. She scratched her own face just to frame me, to ruin our Christmas. Tell her, Grant, tell her she's sick." My father was silent. His grip on her arms was the only answer. I looked at Serena. I almost pitied her. It was the last desperate lie of a woman who had run out of scripts. "I knew you would say that," I said, my voice calm. I clicked the remote again. The zoomed-in photo vanished. A new file window opened. "That is why I am so glad you are a control freak." I clicked play. "This," I said, "is from your own security system. The camera in the kitchen, the one you use to watch the caterers, the one," I realized, "that has a perfect wide-angle view of the entire living room." A new image filled the screen. It was not a glossy photo. It was grainy, high contrast, black and white security footage. It was silent. And it showed everything. It showed the family, arranged in green. It showed Serena, gliding toward me. It showed her, leaning in, her body blocking the view, her hand coming up. It showed the quick, vicious drag of her hand, the glint of the ring. It showed my head, snapping back almost imperceptibly from the force. It showed me, not flinching, not crying, just absorbing it, and it showed my father, Grant, standing 3 feet away, watching the entire thing, before turning his head, with a bright smile, back to the camera. It was the final, irrefutable, silent evidence, not just of her violence, but of his complicity. He had seen it. He had seen all of it, for years, and he had chosen to say cheeks. The room was silent. The only sound was the whir of the television. Serena's body went limp. My father's hands, which had been holding her, now just held her. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the screen. He was looking at himself, watching his daughter be assaulted, and then turning to smile for a camera. He was watching his own damnation. The video looped, playing again, her hand, the drag, his smile. He turned his head away from the screen. He looked at me. His face, which had been purple with rage, then gray with shock, was now just a wet, crumpled mask of absolute bottomless shame. His mouth opened, closed. He whispered. He looked at Lyra. He looked at the scratch, still angry and red on my real-life cheek. He let go of Serena. She stumbled back, catching herself on the bar. He took one step toward me, then another. He did not try to hug me. He did not ask for forgiveness. He just stopped, 3 feet away. "I'm sorry," he whispered. His voice broke. "Oh, God, Nora, I'm sorry, Con." It was the only true thing he had said all night. It was the only thing that mattered. It was his confession, his surrender. I held his gaze. I did not comfort him. I did not absolve him. I just nodded. Once. Then, I turned and walked to my bag, which was still in the corner. I unzipped the main compartment, and I pulled out a thick, blue, legal-sized folder. I walked to the marble coffee table, the one still littered with champagne flutes and dead gingerbread men. I placed the folder on the table. I had been prepared. A good engineer always has a contingency plan. I opened the folder. Inside were 2 documents and a single, high-end, black fountain pen. "This," I said, "is the quitclaim deed, returning Ellison Cottage to an irrevocable trust in Lyra's name, and mine." I slid it toward him. "And this," I slid over the second one, "is a full, binding revocation of Serena's power of attorney, and the assignment of Harbor and Pine Advisory as your sole financial managers, effective immediately." I uncapped the pen. The click was loud in the silence. I placed it on top of the papers. "You said you were sorry," I said, my voice quiet. "I don't need your sorrow, Dad. I need your signature." He stared at the papers. He stared at the pen. This was the moment, the real one, the one that was not about emotion, but about action, about law, about restitution. Serena watched him. Her face was blank. She was no longer fighting. She was watching a judgment. He walked to the table. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so violently, I thought he would drop it. He sat down, heavily, on the edge of the sofa. He did not read the documents. He just signed. His signature, usually so large and looping, was small, cramped, but it was firm. The ink was dark on the page. He signed the first one. He pushed it aside, and he signed the second one. The pen scratched across the paper, the only sound in the room. When he was done, he capped the pen, placed it carefully beside the papers, and put his face in his hands. A long, low, animal sound of grief came from him. Serena did not move. She watched the pen cap click into place. She watched her name, her power, her entire constructed world, be dissolved by 2 inches of black ink. She looked around the room. She saw the empty glasses. She saw the dark television screen. She saw the video camera, its red light still glowing. She saw Lyra, standing next to me, her face pale but resolute. She saw me, packing the signed documents back into their blue folder. The stage was gone. The audience had fled. Her co-star had abdicated. Her performance was over. She did not say a word. She did not cry. She simply turned, walked to the foyer, and grabbed her $1,000 cashmere coat from the closet. She did not bother with her boots. She slid her feet into her heels, pulled the coat on, and walked to the front door. She opened it. A blast of wind and ice-cold snow billowed into the foyer, a vortex of pure, elemental cold. It whipped her hair across her face. She stood in the doorway for a second, a silhouette against the black, howling night. Then, she stepped out. She did not look back. She walked out into the storm, and she pulled the heavy door shut behind her. The thud was final. The silence that followed was different. It was not a tense silence. It was an empty one. The pressure in the house, which I had lived with my entire life, was gone. It had just walked out the door. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding for 32 years. The house was quiet. The only sound was my father's quiet, ragged sobbing into his hands. I walked over to the tripod, and I pressed the record button. The red light went off. I picked up the pen recorder from the kitchen counter. I turned it off. I pulled out my phone. Mara's message was still on the screen. Awaiting your orders. My fingers were steady. I typed my reply. Hold. Voluntary compliance in progress. I hit send. The clock was stopped. I looked up. Lyra was standing in the middle of the room. Just standing. She was looking at the door where her mother had disappeared. Lyra? I said. She turned to me. She was not crying. Her face was just clear, as if a fog had lifted. She walked toward me, and then she wrapped her arms around me. Her hug fierce, her body light. I held her, and I could feel the tremor in her body finally subside. She was not shaking. She pulled back, and a small, watery, real smile touched her lips. She exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. I can write about tonight, she whispered. I smiled back. You should. It's a hell of a story. My father's sobbing had subsided. He was now just sitting, a broken man, alone by a dying fire. He pulled out his phone, his hand still shaking. He was not calling Serena. He was looking up a number. I heard him murmur, Harbor and Pine Advisory. Yes, leave a message. He was making the call. He was booking his appointment for December 26th. After, he put the phone down, and he opened his laptop. He started typing. I saw the subject line. A Christmas apology. He was writing the email to the relatives. He was, at last, doing the work. I left him to it. I walked to the fireplace, to Serena's shrine, the mantelpiece, covered in her perfect, silver-framed lies. I picked up the one from tonight, the one with the scratch, the one she had printed and framed before the party had even begun. I looked at it. Then, I leaned down, and I tossed it into the back of the fireplace. The paper curled, blackened, and vanished. I looked at the other photos, all of her. Center frame, center frame, center frame. I found the one of my grandmother, the one of her in the cottage, her hands covered in flour, her smile real. It was tucked in the back, off-center. I picked it up, I wiped the dust off the glass, and I placed it, firmly, in the center of the mantel, where it belonged. The house was quiet. The only sounds were the click-clack of my father's keyboard and the tick-tock of the clock in the hall. 10 seconds. The timer had run out. I looked at Lyra, who was looking at the photo of our grandmother. I looked at my father, who was writing his confession. It was not a perfect picture. It was a ruin, but it was real. No one was telling us to smile. No one was shouting, cheeks. I picked up my phone, my real one. It's over, I whispered, to Lyra, to the room, to myself. We're free! Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so glad I could share this with you. I am always curious. Where in the world are you listening from right now? Please, let me know in the comments below. I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to Lila Revenge Stories. Like this video, and if you can, support us by hitting that hype button, so this story can be heard by even more people who need to know they are not alone.